Hey, this is Pastor Nick Gillespie from the Grace Baptist Church. Thank you for tuning in to our channel and watching this sermon. I hope this sermon that comes up is a blessing and an encouragement to you. If you ever see fit to come join us, we're at 344 8th Street at the corner of 8th and C, downtown Springfield. We'd love to see you. I have another message for you right at the end. Stick around. Watch a league game in Indiana. That's just kind of weird to say. I wanted to use a couple minutes, if you don't mind, to give a couple building updates. So last Sunday, we were able to meet with the builder. When I say builder, it's because we weren't, a couple of the things we're doing are beyond the scope of what any of us could probably do. And so, just talking about timing, is they're going to extend the wall out. Expensive, but frankly, it's just something, you just look at the project and you just know that that's what we have to do, and it just needs to be done. And so it's adding months onto our start date over there. And so yesterday when he said that, because he said, hey, permits are going through the city quick right now. And I was like, man, that's encouraging. Okay, and he told me, about 3 weeks to get the plans out, 3 weeks maybe to get a permit back. How long for you? He says, maybe 6 months. Oh, I don't know if my face dropped right in front of him, so instant discouragement. But I had to remind myself this week of what I've always taught, is we don't turn a positive into a negative, right? And so if you see me doing that, just kick me in the pants, on the way by, and because this, I don't know if you know, the three visitors we had 2 weeks ago. All three of them, two of them, was two different family groups. They both came because they saw the sign up. We have this whole time have taken the sign down at every service because the city 14 years ago told us we had to. Because if you keep the sign up during the week, you become a majority user, and this building isn't permitted, isn't zoned for a church. But we can be a minority user. Yes, AA and NA can have their signs up, but a church can't. And we had fun with that. They tried to boot us out of here. And we finally used the word, we feel like we're being discriminated against. Because really, in the eyes of the law, what's the difference between a church and an AA group? And they didn't have an answer for that. And I said, so we both open books, we both sing songs, we both gather. And one of them is just a church, and one of them's AA. Matter of fact, AA probably mentions, as far as I understand, they mentioned Jesus Christ and God as well. And so, they couldn't backpedal fast enough. But they did set certain limitations on our being here. And one of them is you can't have the sign up, on the building when you're not meeting. And we had to be limited to a certain number of cars per week. And it could be averaged out over a certain amount of time. They've never checked. We've never counted. And the number was actually quite high. So, but I tell you what, man, I'm itching to get these, new things that, when I say new things, our week schedule, our schedule during the week, I should say, not our week schedule, WEEK, and things going. I'm just itching for it. And it just kind of pushed it out another 3 months from what I was expecting. So, and the Legion as well. I'm itching for things over there, itching to get the Legion, back up, and it's just, it's kind of like in a different area now. But here's a kind of a positive of the whole thing. Well, the whole thing's positive. So the people who are buying this building, we expect to close in the next 3 weeks. Now, where have you heard that before? We thought that we were going to close in August originally. And but what happened was the bank asked the buyers to go to the city to be sure that this building could be used by who's going to be moving in and buying it. It wasn't the city that asked them. The city is fine with it. The bank just wanted to double check, hence part of the delay. And so one of the things they've heard is that curb out there. You know how it's kind of goofy? You have the street, and then you have the low curb, and then you have pavement, and then you have another sidewalk. The city wants that to be made like all the other sidewalks in town or in the area. And so the owners reached out to us. At this point, we can say no about anything. We're already beyond discovery. We're already beyond everything. Earnest money is in our checking account. We could tell them, kick rocks, and they're kind of stuck. But So what we've done is, the realtor suggested it, is return to negotiation, because they still have to go through processes here as well. And so part of the negotiation, yeah, we might help a little bit with that. We say a little bit, based on what we consider the value of this building per month for us still to meet here. And it could be that we're meeting here up until summer. I don't know. And that's part of me, what I'm just, I want to know answers. I want to know when we're not meeting here anymore. I want to know what our next step is. And we just don't know. And so if it ever sounds like, I wish I knew what was going on, we don't know what's going on next. We could meet here for 3 more weeks. We could meet here for 5 more months. We might, going into a school. I came up with another idea of a place to meet this week. But you know what? We may not ever need it. And so that's where we are. But remember, don't turn a positive into a reason to be negative. And if you can join me on that, that'd be great. But the Bible does talk about Proverbs, hope deferred maketh the heart sick, right? And so, you're hoping for something, you look forward to something, it gets deferred. But you know what, man, this is going to be a good thing. Those 3 people that showed up just off of a sign left up because we started leaving the sign up. And now we're going to have 15,000 people seeing a day. People are asking you about it in the stand, right? What's the building going to be? They put the new signs yet for us? We have, matter of fact, our new signs, you've seen the post maybe gone up. We're going to have a new church sign, the Legion sign, up in the next week or so. And so now we're going to have to put something across it, coming soon or something clever. My idea is we're preparing a place for you. But, I've been told that's a little cheesy. Hey, I'm embracing cheesy. So we'll see how it goes. But I hope that's just a quick update for you. I hope that's helpful for you. And let's go ahead and pray and we'll get started. Father, again, we're thankful for our Sunday together. We're thankful that we have a place, and we're thankful for you. Lord, thankful for the church being together. Pray you bless us as we meet, help us as we learn. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The sermon this morning is not a message I want to deliver. And when I say that, it's not because I'm not anybody's case this morning. It's just within the last few weeks, I thought, this is the message that I should give. Up to the point where I'm in the middle of writing it last night, and I tried my best to do something else. I listened to a couple sermons, hoping maybe there'd be a springboard in there and I thought, maybe that's a good springboard. Maybe I could go this direction. And I'd sit there and think about it for a minute. It's like, no, I can't. Kept on going back to this sermon that I already have written. And I tried to look at maybe some old ones for some ideas. And I keep coming back to this one. And so this morning, I'm slightly nervous, but I believe the message is right. But this is the first time that I can ever remember asking somebody for advice on a sermon that I'm giving. And it happened Wednesday night, sat right here across from Matt, and I'm like, I need your advice on this. The message I'm going to give Sunday is this. And he's like, yeah, personally, I wouldn't do that. But, if you think it's the direction you're supposed to go, then do it. And so this morning, Howard's delivered it with love. Sarcasm may come out from time to time, but I hope not. But presenting the other side to a controversial issue can do that. And so I'm trying to avoid that if at all possible. But you keep hearing things. And when you keep hearing things, at some point you start saying, I have to address this. We've addressed it many times. And I'm hoping this is the last time I ever talk about this. But I know it won't be because, we're still going to be here for a while. And, not here in this, but I'm just talking about, my plan is to be here for the next 12, 13 years, unless you vote me out before that, or if God, calls somewhere else. But that hasn't happened in 20 years, and nor do I think it's going to happen. But who knows? the Lord can do whatever He wants. And so I wanted to talk to you today, and I don't have a good working title for this, and it's called this: To Those Who Have Left Churches. And before I say that, I have left too, so I'm speaking to myself as well, and I'll give a background to that. 1 John chapter 2, verse 19 says this: They went out from us, but they were not of us. Now again, in context, this is talking about antichrists. This is talking about, this verse is being used slightly out of context, but the truth still remains. For if they had been of us, they would have no doubt continued with us, but they went out that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us. I also part of my desire today, I don't think this, I'd be surprised if this is helpful to anybody today that's in here, but I do want to step up to your defense as people in a church. There's not a person that's left this church who isn't welcome back. Of course, I'm not counting on it when I say that, but if so, there are some people that probably there'd be some steps that would need to happen. There's reasons people leave. I wrote down 7. I'm sure we could think of more. One of them is they just slowly slip out. We've seen it many, many times. I'm not talking about that group today. And that's just, you can see slowly fading out. There's backsliding, and we say it all the time. There's a difference, though. In 20 years, do you think that I've ever backslidden? Yeah, you have. Joe, have you? Yeah, stick it out, right? And, but there's those that maybe visit a couple times. And we've seen that many times. So, and this place isn't for everybody. And we get that. And less people find us because of where we are. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to over there. All the work we put into getting people into church. All the investment, all the money, all what you put into the offering plate to help us in outreach. And some, that we go out, we're knocking on doors, we're putting Bibles on doors. New Testaments on almost every door in Springfield. We work hard at this. And the truth is, you just need a sign on the side of the road sometimes to say, hey, we're here. But I get it. So that's going to happen more. People visit a couple times, and people come, people go. We're okay with that. There's another reason, that's personality conflict. See, here's the thing. You won't come to this church and stick beyond 3 or 4 services if you don't like me. Just the truth of the matter. So I have to sit here and understand, you at least somewhat like me. And, we have staff here, and we're I hate to use them again, but we're trying, we can be like the Beatles. Maybe you like me, but you don't like Matt. Maybe you like Matt, and you don't like me. Maybe you don't like either one of us, you like Chris. We're okay with that. Just buy the album, right? And root for the guy that you're for. That's fine. But personality conflict, and it happens no matter where you go. That's the one that irritates me, is personality conflict, because you know what? I am going to make you mad at some point. I'm going to disappoint you at some point. Then another group. I lumped 3 different groups into here, and that's doctrinal differences, moral issues, and abuse. Man, I tell you what, now I think if there's a doctrinal issue, I think that there's something said for sticking it out and fighting that doctrinal issue. If I were to come up and start preaching up something goofy and, start coming up and, hey, there's, any Bible's okay or anything of that nature, then I think you push back, because I think keeping this church doctrinally straight, I'm not saying we're right on everything, but however, something like that, I think it's worth fighting to make sure this church stays doctrinally straight in some of those issues, whether you have a personal conflict or not. If I start going a different direction on the Bible, then I think what you do as a church is not leave, is that you fire me. I'm not sure how, Joe, what's it take to fire me? I think it's majority vote. You and Chris could decide to vote one of us out, right? I forget how it works. I don't remember either. It can be brought up, and you know what? Hey, if I come up here and tell you, hey, just whatever Bible, no big deal. The Bible's not perfect, not the Word of God, then you know what? Fire me. And then you call somebody in here that can actually stick to some good doctrines. Moral issues, yeah, you fire somebody. Abuse, and man, that's not something you stick around for. And I know that in a room like this, there's people who face things like that in churches before. And so we're certainly not talking about those things there. And again, but doctrinal differences, that's something you have to weigh. Maybe it's not worth your fight. Maybe it's not worth your time. And I get that too. Sometimes it's just easy to go find somebody with the right doctrinal stance. There's some people that just move. It's great. Or sometimes there's just that God moves them to something else. And we get that as well. Throughout 20 years, that's the thing about sticking to one place now for over 20 years. There's people out there that I have hurt and people I have done wrong. I've had the opportunity on many occasions to apologize to them. And, I ran into, you might remember the Tallertons. And I'm sorry, I've got something goofy going on over here. Ran into, the Tallertons, Thatch and Wendy. And they now live in Portland. But they were here for a little bit. And, man, I was young. I did and said some stupid things. Sorry about that. And we had a great time outside of Walmart. Matter of fact, she came for church for a few times after that. We're outside of a Mexican restaurant over in Thurston, and ran into somebody who'd gone here for a long time before, and we had a great conversation. And matter of fact, I respect how they left. I think they left the church properly, but through the conversation, we're both saying how it's amazing how we thought we had it all figured out, and both of us looking at each other, realizing we didn't. Both of us had strong parenting opinions. And both of us talking to each other, sometimes you think you have it all figured out, and sometimes you don't. But I had a recent long conversation that might have actually been, don't want to use the word springboard, the catalyst, whatever, for what I'm going to talk about today. And this long conversation was with somebody, and it was a good conversation. It was just, chit-chat back and forth. But this person said, I was afraid that when I stopped going to church that you wouldn't talk to me anymore. But I loved the conversation because I was able finally, in this instance, to give another side of the story, which doesn't get to happen very often. Had a great chit-chat. A lot of time was taken. And so I said, not in a way that was attacking, I said, give me some examples of times that I cut people off. You were here long enough to see it, and we had discussions. And by the way, I even brought up names. Yes, this is where, these people might feel that way. And there was a good back and forth between us. But I said, hey, listen, when you left, you didn't come out of here gossiping. You didn't come out of here bad-mouthing other people. You didn't attack my friends. You didn't attack anybody. You just kind of left. And I said, we're still having this conversation. There's nothing back and forth that needs to be said. We discussed a couple of the people that he felt, actually I didn't even mean to say he, but felt like people were cut off. And then I was able to explain my side of the story, which sometimes I'm really tired of doing. But in pointing out why cutting off is sometimes the right thing to do. If you're hurting my friends or my family, I'm just not going to hang out with you. If there's abuse, I'm not going to hang out with you. It's just like, if I have somebody in my life that leaves, Joe, use you for an example again, and decides they hate Joe Harper, and and just no, and then all of a sudden now I'm going to go hang out with them? No, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to take Joe Harper's side every time on that. But if you step out with lies, gossip, or trying to win my family members over to your side, yeah, that's a problem. And I'm not going to be all chummy with people who do that. And so what I'm asking for to you today is some understanding. I'm asking for a little bit of grace as I explain. I'm not getting into personals. I'm actually just giving generals. But to give me a little bit of grace on this. But in that, we were able to get great understanding because two people sat down and chit-chatted about something and came, and I was able to, explain my side. Hey, this is what happened. This is it. But, however, what I came away from that conversation was a disappointment with how little understanding that there is from, when I'm up here speaking, I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time. If I taught something 7 years ago, and, if I were to teach another sermon on internal security, I'd feel like, man, I've done this 15 times in church. But how many times can you speak on internal security? We can do it every Sunday. But however, what I wonder, though, is if I sometimes speak above somebody's head. Do I need to simple it? Do we need to shorten the sermon time and get a lot more simpler? And I don't know the answer to that question. But what I would, because some of the things I'm saying just are not being caught by somebody who was here for a while. But at the same time, maybe that's part of it, is just they weren't listening, and maybe I shouldn't make decisions based on that. If any of you are on social media, And I am. And occasionally you run into people who are angry and bitter at a church. And I understand that it happens. But you see something like this here, and they post something like, you can still be friends with people who leave your church. We aren't in gangs. And see things like that. I see them all the time. I think maybe it's because I'm part of groups that include churches and doctrinal teaching, and I try to keep my social media a little bit over into those types of issues. But what people will do is they'll come up with something like this, and they'll start talking about, man, I left the church, nobody talked to me. Well, then there are some people in comments that could I read through them because I want to know what's going on because it helps me understand people. And some people are like saying, well, how did you leave the church? But most of the people are saying, yeah. But then there's some occasionally saying, well, wait, how did you do it? Is there a lack of contact in the future? I could go through the room. Ron, how about I ask you, Ron, how many times have I called you in the last year?
67.
No. I think I've called you twice.
I was going to say no.
Well, now we're going to have to look. No. Joe, you've been in this church how long? 20 years? Over 20? How many times have we talked on the phone the last year?
Last year. Maybe.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember. So, by the way, if any of you ever feel left out, I'm not a call you on the phone guy. And I wish I was. I wish that I was just that guy that could pick up and text. And you know what? Been thinking about you. Praying for you. And, and I can show you the list on my phone where I flip through. All of your pictures are on there. And I pray for you. Yep, everybody's on. And there are some kids that aren't. But however, all the families in general are on there. And so with that, and I can show it to you if you want. I can text you there and say that, but I'm not that guy. I feel like I'm bothering you. However, mentally, I know that if you were to get that text from me, you would not feel like I'm bothering you. I know that. I know that. So imagine then if you and I are going to the same church, then how you would feel about my contact for you then. Would you feel cut off? Would you feel like, oh, he never reaches out? I didn't reach out when you were going here. It's who I am. I looked up, by the way, imposter syndrome. I do not have imposter because I read through the thing. I thought imposter syndrome meant I feel like I'm always imposing. And that is not what imposter syndrome meant. But when I use that, I do feel like an imposter if I'm texting you or calling you. Always. And I don't care who you are. I talk to probably Matt more than anybody, and even then, I feel like if I text or call him, I feel like I'm imposing on his time. It's a personality flaw. I've tried to get over it. I will continue to try to get over it. Yeah. Did you get my text this morning?
Yeah. Yep, I was so excited.
I had to let somebody know, hey, you know what, we've missed you. That was tough.
I'm the same way though, so I appreciate it.
I sent that actually at 2 in the morning last night, but I have a little feature on our software that I can have it so it doesn't send until a certain time, so that you aren't waking people up. But Now, if I was hoping Craig would be here today, Chris told me he has more problems. I talked to Craig probably more than anybody. And you know why? Because he texts me. Hey, what do you think about this Bible thing? What do you think about this? I'm like, oh, sweet. And then there's a back and forth. You do realize that when you look at a pastor and tell him you're leaving, that you are actually firing him. You get that, right? And so, but you shouldn't take that personal. And I'm sorry, I'm always going to. I met with somebody many years ago, and who was leaving. I knew they were. We had a special guest speaker in town, spoke that morning, and I knew they were on their way out. But said, hey, I need to meet you, and went to Sherry's, and so that place. Come to find out, it's cursed anyways, and closing all those. I hear some of Denny's are next, but. And as we sat down, he said, well, hey, thank you, Pastor, for taking time to meet. And he stopped and he said, scratch that. Thank you for meeting me, Nick. Wow. You're not my pastor anymore. You just flat out. I mean, so that was personal, and it was, and I look back at it, it was personal. Matter of fact, we've talked to his wife, been in contact, and there's been apologies there. And not on the other one, he still holds a whole heap of bitterness, misplaced or whatever. I've had one person who they're one family where I ran into their young daughter who told me at one point, you're not our pastor anymore, right? Yes, I was aware. We have a new one now. And for me, that it killed me. And they go, well, why aren't you showing up and being up? Oh. Of course, that same family at some point when I bought a car, one of the young kids said, hey, you know what? For what you paid for this car, we're talking about 6 or 7 years old. For what you paid for this car, our family could have bought 5 of what we bought. Wow. I guess there is a home I'm being spoken about in, using me as an example for your financial decisions. And it was fair. By the way, I shouldn't have bought that car. But, oh. But anyways, I've never been fired. But I've never had anyone from a job I've left reach out to me. I worked at Cintas for 7 years, and not one person from Cintas has ever reached out to see how I'm doing. I worked at Groupon. Matt and I have stayed in contact. Remember, he was my boss there for a bit. And you know what? Matt and I have stayed in contact. That's it. Groupon, Air Force is slightly different. Those of you that are veterans know that, that you leave because you're discharged, right? And so there's people that you went through some things with, and you reach out. Cave Out, certainly nobody has reached out from there. I wasn't a fan of them, and I don't think they were a fan of me. But I asked this person I had this long, lengthy conversation back and forth with because I knew him well enough to know some of the jobs he had in the past. And I said, hey, has anybody from that company reached out to you? He said, no. And I said, does that upset you? He said, no. Why? Interesting. So we now, as a church, get held to a higher standard because we didn't reach out to you, but you're talking about these people you spent an entire Monday through Friday with. None of them have reached out to you. You're not mad at them, but somebody you spend an hour with, and because sometimes that's all that happens is you spend an hour together. But you're mad at them for not reaching out. So again, well, I guess not. We're held to different standards as a church, and I understand that. James chapter 3, verse 1 says this. Says, my brethren, be not many masters. And what that's talking about is be not many, teaching over a lot of things. Because the more I teach, the more that, if I do something goofy, you're going, aren't you a pastor? Right? Joe, you get out of line. Man, aren't you on staff of that church over there? Aren't you the music guy? Right? Aren't you a Christian? Because people who don't hold to the same standard that we do expect a different standard from us. It's life. I get it. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing we shall receive the greater condemnation. That's not talking about from God. That's talking about from society. Just the fact that you came to church this morning. Your neighbor saw it, right? Your neighbor saw you heading out. You're dressed all nice and heading to church. Maybe you got new kicks on, whatever the case is, and, pulling up. They saw it. And so they hold you to a higher standard. Now get in your car and speed down the road when you're heading to church. It's a different thing than if you're late for work. It's just the way it is. And it's okay. But now watch this. Those people, those places that I brought up, friends at work have stayed in contact. Friends at church stay in contact as well. But I told them, and say in defense of people that don't leave, if you leave, you don't get to dictate when or if people reach out to you. You don't get to dictate. There is always hurt when somebody leaves, and we're all going to handle it differently. Leaving hurts people, and there's no way around it. So as I was talking to Matt Wednesday night, he made an astute observation, and I have been noodling on this all week. And I learned something, and it's like an aha moment. The early church, when I say the early church, I'm talking about our early church, not the early church, back, in the first century. The early church, 2004 through, I'd give it 15 years, first 15 years of our church. Our church was a large friend group. Now stop. Now some of you probably wouldn't even understand. We did everything together, right? We had Thanksgivings together. We had, Super Bowl party. We did all these things together, and we're doing a lot less of that. So then if you're part of the friend group, and the thing you have in common is church, and then all of a sudden you leave church, then expect still to be in the friend group is unreasonable. And so then, all the more so, you see that on social media that somebody is gathering without you there when you used to be there. You're going to feel left out when nobody did it on purpose. It's just all of a sudden, wait, we don't see you anymore. Now all of a sudden you want to be involved in these other things we do? That's not how it works. It'd be weird. It'd be awkward. And it's not on purpose. Do you all realize that Matt and I were in this scenario, right? You realize that Matt and I hated each other for a while? You know that. You know that. And by the way, it was mutual. We hated each other, right? Gavin shows up to church. Remember it was Miranda and Gavin? I said, the best of the Burkheads are here. Remember I said that all the time. The best of the Burkheads are here. When they came and visited from Eastern Oregon, Is that Eastern Oregon? Central Oregon? And you know what? I know from the others, that it was mutual. And but however, see, that's the power of the apology, the power of coming together and coming together for understanding. That's no relationship is ever. Well, okay, some are beyond fixing, but however, there's some that are not. Have you noticed the lack of Bible in today's message? We'll get there. By the way, I'm proud of Matt. Sermons of late, I don't know if you've noticed, there's some patterns in them. I don't know if you've noticed, there's some things that he's figuring out at the same time I am. But there's been a change in his heart. And I wish, of course, most of you just know Matt from the Coming Back Matt. But if we look at the Matt from the last 20 years, the change of heart, and then for me, I'm going to be further back than that. There's a maturity, there's a self-awareness, and I'm proud of him for that. Then part of my question for myself as I went through this is, why in the world am I giving this message to you? Part of me wants people in the future of our church to hear and understand where we're coming from when we talk about leaving a church. There's a difference between me now and me a long time ago. Me a long time ago, you come to this church, I'm going to try all my power to keep you in it. I'm going to, you come here, it's a closed fist. I'm going to try my best to keep you in. I'm going to try my best to follow up. I'm going to be at your house on Friday. I'm going to be at your house. I'm going to text. Because I used to actually go to all the houses just about. And because I figured that's part of my job. You know what? Get them attached to me. Maybe then they'll stick around. And so, keep them. But, what our church has transformed into is we don't hold people like that anymore. And so what we've done is we've hold them with an empty hand. You're free to come and go anytime you want. You want to go? Go. But if you leave as a Christian. And you know what? When we see each other, we'll pat each other on the back. But you leave gossiping, you leave backbiting, you leave by abusing my friends or, their family. You know what? You probably wake up one morning and find out I blocked you on Facebook. By the way, I need to back up on that. If you ever, blocking people on Facebook is my thing. I have over 700 people, but I did the math this week. When I'm talking about 700, if I see somebody disparage Christ and they're like in a group or whatever the case is, block, done. Saying something stupid or ignorant, block, done. And by the way, I did the math, so if I've been on Facebook for over a decade, it comes out to only about a person a week for that entire time. So let's not get bent out of shape. But however, if you're abusive to my daughter, You know, like maybe a past boyfriend, whatever the case is. I don't remain friends with that person. I'm not going to go hang out with that person. I'm not going to go, chummy with that person who was somewhat abusive to my daughter and then look at my daughter and say, hey, you know what? You just have to live with it. Right? I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's right. So, here's the statement. Leave like a Christian and chances are better that we stay in contact in the future if that's what's important to you. But if you leave whilst, I'm using the word whilst in my notes, gossiping, backbiting, or spreading bitterness, no, it's probably not going to be the case. And by the way, here's what Matt and I came up with when we spoke Wednesday night. Is I need people to understand my personality when it comes to this. In the future, I need to probably be better to talk about it because I am not one of the text and reach out and call you guys. So when I get hurt, I have a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism is out of sight, out of mind. And that developed through growing up and being in horrible situations that I didn't want to be a part of. And so mentally escape and be somewhere else, even if I have to be there physically. It's how I had to deal with it. And, out of sight, out of mind. You can't hurt me anymore. You hurt me, I draw a line right there. I have this moat. I have this wall. You can't hurt me in the future. I'm not going to let it happen. Now, there are times when you just have to be okay with being hurt, let somebody in, whatever the case is. But that's part of my personality, part of my defense mechanism. And at 50 years old, I don't think that's going to change. Maybe. And I hope someday it does. And most of the time, I generally forget because of it. I can tell you that I don't have bitterness in my heart towards people because you know what? Out of sight, out of mind. I just go about my day. But now the danger in that is when now all of a sudden it's brought back up, then all of a sudden it wells back up because I didn't deal with it. That's how it's going to be, even if I was in the midst of it. Get mad at me all you want, but that is how I cope. And so that's just how I am. And it's not personal. But our approach, and my approach, has changed. I'm perfectly okay with people not sticking it out here. Philosophically, I'm okay with it, but personally, I'm still going to have a problem with it. You can't expect me to be, but people will and do move on. So, and part of the reason I'm giving it to you today is for your defense. Because people will stand up and say, well, you never reached out to me. Was I supposed to? Wait, what are you talking about? So, what do I use for the Bible for this story, for this sermon? Do I use the parable of the lost sheep? Well, Jesus chased down the one that was lost. Yeah, but he also took it and put it on his shoulder and carried it back. That wasn't a sheep, that was a lamb. And Jesus did that, not anybody else. But however, does that apply to people severing relationships? It talks about little ones and the same thing. And the next part of the chapter, in chapter 18, after chapter 18, where you find that story, then mentions taking our problems to the church. You can't take your problems to a church if you're not part of the church. But Jesus assumed that Christians would be part of the church. It's amazing how that works. It's in the same chapter. So then we're using the Bible teaching of negatives, which is hard. Jesus never chased anyone. Never begged anybody to follow him. Never. How about the story of the prodigal son? The father went out and waited at the fence post at the edge of the property and just drank his coffee and waited for his son to come back. He didn't chase him. But yet the hero of the story of the prodigal son isn't the son that came back. It's the son who stayed. The son who stayed is now in charge. Guess who's sweeping up the pens tomorrow? Guess who? Because that guy, the younger one, took his inheritance and spent it on righteous living. So now all of a sudden, who's in charge tomorrow? Yeah, one son gets the fatted calf today. One son gets the nice robe today. One son gets the new shoes. One son gets the ring on his finger. But who's in charge tomorrow? Son who stayed. So again, you're teaching out of a negative. And when I say teaching out of a negative, I don't mean, we're looking at the stories and what it teaches, and so what we're finding is the opposite. We're not teaching, it isn't a negative teaching. It is the absence of maybe teaching that we should be saying. Both Jesus and Paul commanded us to separate from those who are simply unruly. If somebody has false doctrine, certainly we're supposed to do that. 2 Thessalonians 3:6, don't even have it upon the thing. Now we command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that we withdraw yourself from every brother that walketh disorderly, not after tradition you received from us. So with that, we have to have some points. And let's have a little bit of scripture in here. And again, so one of the reasons I want to have this is so, people in the future, I don't want you to feel pressure to stay here. I don't want somebody to come here and feel like, oh, make friends. If I leave, then everybody's going to... Not one time in 20 years have I ever asked anybody in this church not to be in contact with somebody else. There was one time I brought up, I said, I think it'd be in your best interest not to. But anyways, here's what we need to do. And I need your help on this. Number one, we must find the balance between good follow-up and no follow-up. Right now, we're in no follow-up phase. Before, we were overly zealous on follow-up. And so I had a conversation with my sister-in-law, Renee, this past week. And I said, simply opening the Bible to me should be enough to have people in church. The Bible's open. I hate the idea of having coffee at church. Sorry, Gav. I hate the idea of having donuts. But you know what? The people who come to the church, you don't come because of the coffee. You don't come because of the donuts. So, however, you get people to come there. And when I say I don't like it, I'm perfectly fine with it. Perfectly fine with it. And as a matter of fact, there's a kind of a funny thing going on with donuts for some reason. Now we're back to the donuts I think we should have. I think it's Chris's area. Matt wants us to have the nice donuts every week. But then when you have the nice donuts, you have Ron out back in the parking lot, trying to, all the stuff that's being spilled off the new good donuts all over the parking lot. And the purpose of food and donuts is to bring us together, not send people out to the parking lot. This has been a discussion. Well, we can cut them in half. Who wants to pick up a donut that's been cut in half by a person you don't know? I don't. I just think that opening the Bible ought to be enough. And by the way, I believe you do too as well. Now, our new building is going to have a sign. We're going to have a new building. People are going to show up out of curiosity. Nobody comes here out of curiosity anymore. When we first started the church, people just showed up out of the blue. Where do these people come from? I read it in the paper. Read it in the paper. Remember we used to run ads in the paper? Yellow pages. But the Bible gives no instruction on follow-up in people who visit. So what we do is we apply principles on our how-to. And by the way, you can do it. You see somebody not here today, you can reach out. Doesn't just take me, but if you don't want to, you don't have to either. I'm not saying that either. This isn't a shame session on that. You want to reach out to somebody, you don't have to reach out to me to do it. If you want to reach out to me and say, hey, what's going on here? I'm glad to tell you. And then, you know what? Follow up. But number two, we won't be unkind to anyone. We won't be unkind to anyone. Just because I don't have contact with somebody doesn't mean I'm going to be unkind. Maybe you're in the middle of Walmart and you're going through and you're pushing your cart. Well, some of you probably don't go to Walmart. Where do you guys go? Where do you go to Trader Joe's? Maybe you're pushing through Trader Joe's. Maybe, I call it pretentious Joe's, but whatever. They have some good stuff there. And so you're going through and you see somebody you don't want to talk to. What do? Is that being unkind? No. Now looking at them, that's being unkind. But avoiding somebody isn't. You know what? I have some internal things that I'm trying. I need to keep my day going good. There's people out there that I'm probably going to avoid. I'm not going to be unkind. Ephesians 4:32. Be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. It doesn't mean that I have to be somebody's buddy. I have to be nobody's buddy. I have this in my notes again, and I feel like I will not be friends. I will not hang out with family members or close friends of users. All right, back to me for a minute. I told you I left 2 churches in my life. Did I say that in my notes? I said that somewhere. Yeah. I did. There was one church I should have left, but I didn't do it right. And then the other church I shouldn't have left, but I still didn't do it right. And by the way, both of those pastors I reached out and apologized to. And one of them was posthumously. I didn't realize he died. But then his wife and I had great conversations, and whatever. But the other one, man, I apologize. I'm like, there was no reason for me to leave your church. If I can put an excuse on it, I was, 20, going to church, and there was another family that was kind of like a mentor role for me, and they decided to leave, and I just followed them. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, and we've reconciled all that. And and I told them, hey man, you've been a great influence. You were a great influence for that short time, and I appreciate it. But by the time we got to the third church, the first church I didn't leave with anybody. It was but still, that's when I should have. I still didn't handle it right. The one I went to was by accident, and I met some other people, and I shouldn't have left that church, but I didn't handle it right. I shouldn't have, and I didn't handle it right. But then we went to the third. That's where I realized my call to preach. That's where there was a lot of great things happening there. And then that family who left the other church decided they're going to leave again after like 6-7 months. And we recognized the patterns. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. So the family that I left the second were leaving again. I wouldn't go. And here I am, a 20-year-old kid. And then they got mad at me when their kids missed us at holidays. Because we're both in the Air Force, and we worked actually in the same building. And I'd occasionally go over there and talk to them, say, my daughters were crying because, you and your wife weren't there for Thanksgiving. I'm not the one that left. But I still, it won't be unkind. So number 3. I still got 2 points. I didn't think this thing would take half hour. And here we are at 45. Number 3, figure out our differences. Figure out our differences. We're all going to disagree on something. And by the way, I'm punch drunk from it. Sometimes, Sam and I talked about this before. I have a response to something he sent me. I don't want to send it. He's fine with it. And we're going to have a great understanding on it. But, there's been too many times where he sends something or say something. And, Sam and I are above that. I get that. But he just still punch drunk, But anyways, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, look at verses 12 through 14 here. For as the body, that's talking about the local church. For as the body is one, hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body. Now that isn't talking about going down the river and being baptized. So remember, baptism is talking about submersion. And if you picture what's being talked about here, we're baptized into one body. Picture a brick wall. We're submerged. We're brought together into a brick wall. And that brick is submerged. It's in it. We're baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, you just scoop down here to verse 18. Watch this. But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in his body as it has pleased him. I just happen to believe that God put us here. And if you believe that as well, then unless God moves us, it just means we need to figure things out. Because if you leave here over personality conflict, next place you're going to go, there's going to be personality conflict there as well. And again, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about doctrinal differences. I'm talking about personal conflict. So we should unite under truth. Well, let's scoot on. Number 4. Don't fall for things that lead to our not being in church at all. Don't fall for things that lead to our not being in church at all. 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 4 says this, No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. Do you all mind if I just go over a couple minutes here? I want to get a couple stories out. I was discouraged within the last couple of weeks again. If you look throughout the Bible, the people that God chose to pastor or be prophets, they get discouraged, and that's me as well. But I sent the text. You remember we had those 3 families that were showing up, and I really thought, man, we're going to be serving a long time. This is, And so I sent the text. You know me, what I do, I send text to everybody. But there's 2 families, there's kids. The relationship was in trouble, and I saw a future serving together. I sent the text after not seeing them for a couple weeks, and there's a response I get. I have taken a job on Sundays. I believe that we are helping and giving my love to people that need it. It is where God needs me needs me to be right now. Oh, man, I walked away from that discouraged. Oh, come on. We're trying to, and by the way, our church has grown in the last year. I hope you look around and appreciate that. And, but Sunday employment's tough. Things that happen. And I'm not, you want to be out of Sunday, be out of Sunday. I'm not, that used to not be me. But so Wednesday, I was talking about this afterwards because after Matt and I had our conversation, then our wives came in and we're just, chit-chatting for another minute. And we haven't seen a lot of Matt and Miranda for the last, when did you start? September? And so they've been busy on our paper hanger. So, they're stop to think about what our paper hanger, why he's busy. But anyways, but Miranda said this, I was discouraged by that for a moment. I didn't even know she was thinking about it. And she said this, but then I realized we must be on a good path right now to see some of these little battles popping up. She said, I feel like there's a spiritual fight against what we're about to accomplish in this church. And I've seen that all throughout our church history in our 20 years. That's one thing about having, a staff that's been here for 20 years is you see the patterns. You see them. And you see somebody, hey, we're going to take a job. It's just going to be just occasional Sundays when we're trying to work it back the other way. And it doesn't work. It doesn't. Let's go ahead and hit number 5. How about that? Take ownership. Take ownership. This is your church. It's yours. Do you notice my name's not even on the sign anymore? When we adjusted, Matt came back and we ordained Chris. Do you see there that my name was taken off the sign? That was on purpose. I don't put all 3 names up. I don't put any names on. And one of our discussions that we keep having is, what are our titles here? And we just don't care. We got a website coming up, and when that new website's going to have all 3 of us, what order do we go in? I don't know. I just figured we'll do everything alphabetical. But of course that puts Matt first and me second. Unless we go by first name, then it's what? Then it's me third, Chris first. Don't like that either. Wait, so if we go, be Matt, me, Chris. And you know what? I'm fine with it. My name's off the sign. But you know what the thing is? It's ownership. It's yours. It's yours. It's all of ours. Care for it. Give to it. Nurture it. Ephesians chapter 5. And we'll finish up in Ephesians here. Verse 29 says this, for no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. See, church is important. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. Let's go back a chapter to Ephesians chapter 4. And he gave some apostles and some prophets, some evangelists and some pastors and teachers, for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. And that body, again, is the church. Till we all come together in unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Keep it on going. And that henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro. See that there? That's what we're trying to avoid. And carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. See that there? But speaking the truth in love. And by the way, speaking the truth is sometimes things we disagree with, things that we're going to have a problem with. It doesn't. If you're speaking the truth divides. May grow up unto him in all things, which is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth. So we as a church are compared to a body. Now all of a sudden, if the body, if the foot decides, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, I'm just going to stop in, then the church limps. We don't see that. We think that we're not important in it. According to the effectual working of the measure of every part. You have a part in this church. What is it? I'm not asking you to do more. You want to do more, do more. You want to do less, do less. But what is your role here? Are you the eye? Are you the neck? Or what are you? And fulfill it. According to the effectual working in the measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. See, we've all seen this. And I know there's some of you that are going this will resonate with. Too many times the church is weaponized. Membership is weaponized. Groups are weaponized. May that never be the case here. May this be a place of healing. May this be a place of joy. May this be a place when you're walking up here, man, we're glad to see each other. We're going to have a great time. No drama. Not coming in here trying to, kick people out, trying to, conform to a certain thing. Healing, joy, fun, meeting, singing, learning. We've got to do better. And we will. Father, we thank you. Congratulations. You've endured to the end. You made it to the end of the sermon, and I'm proud of you. Hey, my number's at the bottom of the screen here. Text me if you need anything. I hope to see you here sometime. Have a great day.